We're back with another episode of Very True by Verissimo, and I'm super excited to have Neri Bluman on today. I had the pleasure of investing in his last company called XFunnel, which recently was acquired by HubSpot. It was a short but very fruitful journey for us together, and he's had an amazing career trajectory, which I think a lot of budding entrepreneurs can learn a lot from. And so I'm excited to have him on today to learn more about that trajectory, his thoughts, conclusions along the way. We're definitely not done yet. I know there's a lot of more good things to come in his entrepreneurial career in tech. And so I will hand it over to him to start with a little bit of background.
Yeah. Hi, Alex. Thank you for this. Pleasure to be here. So I'm Neri. I was born and raised in Israel, went to college, law school, MBA. I was thinking what I want to do. And I knew I'm not really good in one thing, which I always thought would be like a disadvantage in life. I was like really mediocre in a lot of things, like really good operator. I could just going between things and picking them up, but not really going deep on anything. But I knew I have a lot to do and I have a lot in me that just show myself. And I kind of like accidentally went into this startup world. I think after 15 years, I'm still not very deep in anything, still doing a lot of things, really, really enjoying it. And I think now I believe that there is a room and actually like a really good space in the world for people who are not professional in anything specific, but can go really wide and do a lot of things. So this is one of my discipline, and I'm really good saying it out loud. Like I'm not really good at anything specific. I'm okay in a lot of other things.
I'm a big fan of that as well. I think that the generalist is super underrated. And in a world right now where AI engineering talent is getting NFL style contracts, it seems like maybe that specific skill set is on its own incredibly valuable and kind of exponentially different. But for almost everyone else, it feels like adaptability is the skill set that is going to set most young professionals apart. So you kind of did that, I guess, before it was cool in a lot of ways. On another podcast, I mentioned that if you're really good in two areas and then those areas overlap, you often end up being like the top 0.1% in that overlap. But I think what we're talking about here is even broader than that. And the ability to just tackle problems and handle whatever comes your way, which again, you could say, I'm not specifically good at anything, but I think there's an argument that that by itself should be considered its own superpower and skill set.
Yeah, I will tell you that now it seems like I'm really owning it. But for a long time, I think I was driven by the fact that this is like a disadvantage, and let me prove that I'm worthy of being there and doing startups and doing everything. I was really eager to prove that I can do stuff. And I think more than anything, it's curiosity. It's one of the things that I'm really passionate about it. Being able to say, I have no clue what you're talking about, but let me dive into it. Just recent example, it's like coding. I always wanted to code and I was never good enough. I couldn't really understand how it works. And I tried. And that was like a fail. And like 18 months ago, it was really apparent to me that all of a sudden coding belonged now to my people, which are the generalists, because I know how to speak my mind. And I really know how to speak to a machine, which was really easy for me to start picking it up. And, XFunnel, the last one, my co-founder and I, we were roughly in the same place, and we were in between startups and consulting a few different companies. And we set to really try to think about our next thing, and not in a way of like, let's raise a lot of money and let's start a new company, and just in a curious what's happening in the world right now and what will be an interesting problem to work on. And I think for the first time in a long time, immediately when we thought about the idea, we immediately can go ahead and develop this idea and like go to market with a product that only the both of us developed. It was obviously not scalable in any way, and we had to bring someone in. But that really was one of the times that I felt, oh my God, as a generalist, I have a huge advantage right now.
Hmm.
the machines are now speaking my language. They're no longer belong only for those experts in developing anything. So yeah, that was one of those times that I was really thankful for being a generalist, because I could develop and I also could sail and I also could launch a company, and I knew all of those. And all of a sudden, it's a huge advantage. We were in a market with a product after a couple of weeks, and we were with a customer after 3 weeks. That would never be an option 5, 6, 7 years ago. I would have to find someone and made them go and write a code. And I was like, oh my God, you don't know what you're writing. I need to do this
Yeah.
because I'm speaking to the customer and I need something else. So anyway, those are very exciting time for generalists.
It actually came up just the other day. I was talking to some people about, I was in investment banking at the beginning of my career, and we used to work 16, 18, 20-hour days regularly. And the question is always, why don't you just hire two people to work 10-hour days instead of one person working a 20-hour day? And the answer is that the loss of productivity due to communication and collaboration is like insane. We did an exercise at the end of my investment banking training where like four of us had to work together to do what normally one analyst would do. And it actually took longer for each of us than it would have if any of us had just done it individually. And so it seems like with AI now, that communication and iteration process is just so much faster. I mean, I experienced this myself, not in an AI sense, but when I was at NEA, I was basically serving as the investment banker for one of our portfolio companies that was being acquired. And it was just me and the founder of the company instead of like managing director, VP, associate, analyst stack. And by the way, those people are all functionally kind of the same. And so the
Hmm.
communication there, you could argue, is actually more efficient than when you have designer, product manager, engineer, salesperson all trying to communicate when they fundamentally speak different languages. And again, the efficiency just shoots through the roof. And so those iterations, instead of happening via email or physical or meetings, they just happen instantly. And that's a beautiful thing about the world we live in now, and the ability to say, I understand how the customer thinks and I understand how the machine thinks, and I can just go. But let's take a step back. You started a career as a lawyer. I don't want to go down too far down the tangent, but I think that like the junior law associate job has basically disintegrated in the last 6 months because that job is effectively being an email jockey and a Microsoft Word document jockey. And frankly, a lot of them are not even that good at it.
Yeah.
And now AI has come in and crushed them. But you went from that sort of role into this company Avo, which had nothing to do with law, had nothing to do with like document stuff. Could you tell us a little bit about that transition and the thesis there and how and why you started that company?
Yeah, absolutely. I was an intern in a law firm. So I finished my law degree. I became an intern. I finished my internship. I went to through the bar exams. I never became a lawyer because
Mazel tov.
one thing that I realized is I'm going to be a really, really bad lawyer, because again, this is one of those things that now I'm allowing myself to say out loud, but I don't really have a really good attention to detail. I think there's a lot of people that don't have really good attention to detail. It's not such a bad thing to have as a quality. I think everybody are like, oh my God, I don't have attention to detail, or every job description or every job interview is like, I have a perfect attention to it. I don't have a really good attention to detail. I know how to work with people that has really good attention to detail. But anyway, I realized very fast I'm not going to be a good lawyer. And I had this friend that I had like my first window into entrepreneurship was a company, when we were students, a really interesting take on sunscreen vending machines. Really interesting initiative. It was a dummy machine that you put 10 shekel in, you spin it around and you get like a small tube of sunscreen. This is an entrepreneur going with flip flops to a kiosk at the beach and install machines. This is my entry level entrepreneurship. So I met this guy, which I owe a lot to, and he pulled me in and he said, I'm starting a new thing. It's in e-commerce startup. I didn't even know what e-commerce was, but I said, I like working with you. I think this is like a really common thread. I continue working with people I like. This is the only thing I know for a fact that works for me. So, and I said immediately, like, okay, let's do it. Like, what do I care? Let's meet in your apartment we had two other partners and let's start this thing which I think really, really, really fast developed into something I could never imagine. So the idea was pretty simple. E-commerce has two issues in the business model. The first one is logistic costs. So you pay a lot of money to deliver a product. This is why you have the minimum orders. This is why you have bulk orders. And that was, again, 10 years ago. So it developed a lot in the past 10
Yeah.
years. And the second thing is customer acquisition costs. Supermarket, you have it on the street, so people know that there is a supermarket there. So they go in. E-commerce, you have a customer acquisition cost. So those two make e-commerce a really tough unit economics business. What we thought is we're going to centralize demand into one location. So basically work with building office buildings and residential high-rise buildings. And we will communicate and collaborate with the building management and deliver into that spot in one time a day. And with that, we will lower the logistic costs, we will lower the customer acquisition costs into actually like almost nothing. That was the idea. It actually was a development of a different idea of like daycare, diapers and wipes delivery service. This is how we got to it. It was like we were just shipping diapers and wipes to daycares. And then we said, wait, why not office buildings and why not all the groceries in the world? And this is, how startups are just like, well, what is this corner? Let's go there. Let's turn right. Let's turn left. And let's get to a completely different idea. So we started with that. We half-assed applied to Y Combinator and got in. And I think that was the turning point. Obviously didn't know what Y Combinator is. Obviously didn't know what they even offer and what they are pushing companies to do. But I think before that, it was 4 people delivering a couple of groceries for some office buildings. And all of a sudden, a couple of months after, we are 100 people with a warehouse and developing e-commerce system and online shops, and really, really intense. And I remember one of those long days in the warehouse that was 7 months in, something like that. I stopped and I looked around and I was like, okay, what's happening here? I never experienced this type of inertia and growth. And that was everything for me. The inner generalist, like hyper, I cannot rest. That was amazing. Like, it was the first time I knew I love this world. I love being in a hyper speed environment, and I love the people that it attracted, because those people were not coming for the money. They were not coming for the immediate money, at least. There is like aspirational exit, but nobody really think about it when you're that young as a startup. I think it's one of those things that people always assume, that I wake up in the day and I think about the millions that I'm going to make. That doesn't exist. You wake up in the morning to work because you love that speed and you love that like power that pushes startups. You never think about, oh my God, I'm going to be a millionaire. It just doesn't hold water. And yeah, I love the people that work with me there. And when we were 100 people, we decided that it's going to be something bigger. We very fast raised an A. Immediately after raised a B. Really top investors in Israel was a couple of really strong angels and F2, and then Kleiner Perkins and Insight Partners. And I moved with the company to the US, launched a couple of markets there. That all happened. And then COVID hit. And I found myself in New York, launching our second warehouse. And all of a sudden I was like, oh my God, we are not going to have a business. That was one day. And literally 3 days after, it was like, actually, no, we're not just going to have a business. We're going to have probably 4 or 5 times the amount of business that we had before. And that was one of those like startup moments. It was like, wait, are we going to die? No, actually, you're going to explode. And that was another pivotal moment in the life of the company, that in a year, we grew from 100 people to, I think, 400. And then the year after, we were already 1,000 people.
Wow.
Somewhere around 2020. Back in the day, I was, again, the generalist that I am. The immediate room for a generalist is the chief operating officer. I'm a very good number 2. I'm a very good behind the scene. And I think my role was, as I defined it back in the day, is at every given moment in the company that develop very fast, find this area that doesn't have someone that owns it and take it, do it and get it right. And if needed, hire someone to do it and move on to the next thing. So when we were 80 people, all of a sudden it's a big organization and you need HR functions, but you don't have an HR and you don't even know what HR is. So the chief operating officer, together with being in charge of logistics and the legal and finance of the company and helping raising money, you all of a sudden become an HR. And that was a world that I didn't know anything about. And you need hiring and you need HR policies and you need to really learn about the HR world together with the company and then hire for this role and move to something else. So I think that was my role for the lifetime of the company. I think it taught me so much because in every junction of the company, when we were 80 people, it was HR. When we were 500 people, it was IT and expansion and go to market. When we were 1,000 people, it was PR. It was a lot of those things that you really need to learn how to do and do it almost like because you have to, and then find someone to do it for you, hire and place someone there. So I think that was Avo. That was a very short version of a very long story, and we can discuss what happened after, but that was Avo in a nutshell.
Nice. So I don't think a lot of companies understand how important the role of that utility player is. One of my best friends was that utility player actually at Lyft many years ago. And I meet a lot of companies now where they're so focused on all these functional hires, but you really need the glue. And having that person who's really part of the leadership team to be that glue, I think is one of the defining characteristics of a lot of successful companies. Now, your company was in logistics, had a lot of employees, very different from what XFunnel, is and the efficiency that operates in. But I'd be interested in your take on how that generalist, utility player, jack of all trades, or really becoming expert of all trades operates in, a highly hands-on scaling logistics, human heavy business down to an AI driven software and services tools world that we live in now that a lot of companies are starting in, and how that adapts over to a, you could argue, simpler world.
Yeah, it's a very good question. So I think that first of all, just for my personal story, what it gave me is a lot of confidence that I can do anything, at least a little bit. It sounds very obvious. It will sound like weird for a lot of people, but I'm an introvert. I don't have a lot of self-confidence, but I know now after, it was 2 years ago. So for 10 years or for my entire life, I know that I can pick something up and do it okay. That idea that this is something I can really do well gave you a lot of confidence that I think a lot of people are lacking when they start a company. They have this imposter syndrome. They have this something that blocks them from what I have to do with a startup? What do I have to do with technology or with marketing? I've touched marketing before. I know marketing organization. I know go to market. I'm not a marketing expert. I built a very interesting marketing company and I became the expert in this field in a year. And I can tell you, I'm like Beeri and I and XFunnel, we're the experts in AI or whatever the name for it. It's answer engine optimization. It's the best option for now. We are the experts in this field after a year. And I think just knowing that you can pick something up and become very good at it very fast and build something in it, it's a very important skill, especially now with AI and building stuff. I speak to a lot of founders that have this block that they cannot approach anything because they haven't been in this world. They haven't done anything like that. I think the second thing that I would say is that the noise in a startup, there's a lot of noise. If you wanna build a startup in marketing, so you think that 80-90% of your world will be, let's learn about this new world of answer engine optimization and let's develop something and sell it. But actually there's a lot of noise. There is a lot of bureaucracy. There's a lot of, if you want hiring, there is a lot of noise that comes with a development of a startup, starting with how to set the legal entity and taxes and stuff that nobody want to think about and nobody want to do. I can do it. I can do them very well. And I also have the people that can do them very well. And I remember when I felt like the differences between when launching a company in 2017, Avo, to now, the path that we're now taking is like, oh, wait, how can we start? I know a person, they can do that. I know this and I know this process and they can do that. And clearing that noise was very important for me. And I think that I did very well. And also as a really good number two, it was a very good um, obstacle removal. My co-founder, I knew that he is like a brilliant go-to-market, a brilliant strategist. I need to clear the way for him to do his thing. Like, go bring customers, go think about how to, launch this company, how to be a thought leader, and how to sell the product. So let me do everything else, and you do yours, you do you, and that worked amazingly. Like that collaboration, and I knew I can take anything that he doesn't want to do, or I don't want him to do, and do it. So that was
This is like
an
the
important.
ultimate unsung hero founder story that, you understand that each person has their strengths. And most of the time it's just like one person's really good at sales or product and the other person is like really technical and they can build anything. And I wonder if this maps to a broader idea of like a new paradigm of startups. You're not the first to do this. There's been many others, but I think that this humility and this self-awareness, I guess it seems like you had this early, but a lot of what I'm hearing from you is very like second time founder stuff, right? It's we learned the hard way. We got bogged down in this. We got lifted up in that. We launched a program as Verissimo called It's All About Everything, which is really echoes exactly what you're saying, which is that there's one side of the world that is just going to bog you down. As you said, it's the noise. It's how do we get the right accountants in place? And how do we set up our taxes properly? And how do we set our IT infrastructure so that we can get the right level of compliance? And all of these like nitty gritty questions. And then on the other side, you've got what my friend David Rust calls the zone of genius, which is how do you unlock the superpowers? And what I'm hearing from you is that your superpower is the everything stuff. And you were able to recognize also that Beeri's superpower is the strategy and the sales. And to draw that division and be able to focus on what makes you great, I think is why companies are successful. I've always said that successful companies are just like snowflakes and they're like super unique. And I also say that there's like 5 different reasons that companies fail. And if you could avoid those 5, like 1 or 2 of those 5 reasons, it's almost like a video game, like Frogger. Like if you can dodge the tackles and like stay out of the way, then you can score a touchdown, right? And it feels like that's what you guys were able to do. And it's really a combination of those things where it's like, well, actually the way that you are successful and you don't have to be this unique snowflake is by avoiding those issues and understanding everyone's strengths and weaknesses and making sure that you have all your bases covered.
Yeah. And I would say something else about it, and it will sound obvious, but let's say you're purely representing the VC world. I know you have your own opinions, and I know you're good friends of me and Beeri, but let's say you're presenting the VC world. You want a successful company. I want to remind entrepreneurs, you want to have fun. If those things don't work well together, if you found your co-founder and yourself colliding on what you want to do, and like, wait, but I also want to think about strategy. I also want to sell. And you have those frictions, you're not going to have fun. And I think this is like sometimes it's like, I want to be successful. No, first of all, you're going to work on something for a long time. I know that sometimes it's 11 months, but sometimes it's 7 years.
It's always the culmination of things, right?
Yes. You need to remember that you want to wake up in the morning and have fun with the person that you went on this mission with. And I think if you find a way to talk about it before, or at least know the person, and we can talk a lot about this because I feel like, finding a partner in business is, I always say, my wife doesn't like it, but it's almost harder to find than a partner in real life. There is so much that needs to click from what's your aspirations in life and what you want to achieve and what you even want from this line of work, because it's tough. It's hard work. It's not something sane people would just choose to do in the day to day. So there is so much that goes into it. And I remember, like, I had many initiatives that I started. Those who failed were, I know this is one of your reasons, but those who failed for me was just a poor choice of a co-founder.
So before we get into a mutual love fest for Beeri, I want to talk about really your LinkedIn post recently and the fact that you have proudly displayed there on your LinkedIn career break, health and well-being. And I'm a big fan of Cal Newport and his concepts of slow productivity, amongst other things. And that really good, important work takes time, it takes space. Pseudo productivity or busyness is not our goal. And I'm interested in hearing about how you were able to use that time productively, and like, however comfortable you feel talking about why you feel like you needed it, how you used it productively. Now that you're 2 years past that, how you think about it in retrospect. So, I'll hand it over to you to discuss it.
So wrapping up the Avo story, as happens a lot of the time, there was no magical exit. There was no a successful IPO. 2022 was the financial there was a period of time that the market started to react to what happened during COVID. We weren't able to raise our next round, and we were a company that needed a lot of money and needed money to run their operations. And it's operational. It's a logistics business, and it's a low margin business, heavy on personnel. We had a realization that we knew that in order to pay every vendor and every employee, which was one of the things that we always says, we are not going to go owe money. We're never going to declare bankruptcy. It's not going to happen to us. And we're going to pay every dime to anyone we owe. So we had this decision to really lay off a lot of people. And I remember those days were, one of the toughest days really in my life. And so, but I remember those days. It was really something I've never experienced, because I was, as I mentioned, I was a really important figure in the HR. Obviously, we had a huge HR department, but I was really connected to the employees. This is where I think a little bit my disadvantage of being an entrepreneur, quote unquote, is that I'm really connected. I get really connected to the people. I get really connected to the story, and I get really connected to the narrative of a startup. And it was a really tough experience for me. And it involved a lot of logistics of laying off a lot of people in multiple continents and a lot of warehouses and different figures, and a lot of different aspects of the business were on me. So the logistics aspect of laying off a lot of people were a big part of my operation. So that was one of those moments that I said to myself, like years after, I'm not going to repeat, like a heavy, big organization with a lot of people that needs a lot of funding to survive. And that really left a big mark until today. It's a big thing that I carry with me. And I remember, winding down the business. I was with my partner at the time, and we really thought about what's going to happen. So we were in New York. Obviously, there is no more funding, so I cannot take any salary, don't have money from home. This is what I do. I do startups, and I cannot stay in New York because it costs a lot of money to stay in New York. So I had I had a little bit of money saved up, and I told my wife, let's pack up a couple of suitcases and go to a place where the little money that we saved can carry us and we can live off. And we took a flight to Lisbon, to Portugal. And I didn't know I'm going to take a year off. I didn't know I'm allowed to take a year off. This is something that it's as important as taking a year off is to tell yourself that you're allowed to take a year off. It's something that people don't understand that about themselves. I think a lot of it is because our parents' generation, they had probably 2 jobs their entire life. And whenever my mom called me when I was in this time off, and she was like, so what do you do? I was like, I don't do much. And that was like something that I had to look myself in the mirror. It's like, you don't do anything now. Do you understand that? Is that okay with you? And it wasn't okay for a long time. So I think the first thing that you need to remember is that you have to be okay with taking time off. And that's something that it takes time to acknowledge that. And I know that it's not a possibility for a lot of people for many reasons. Considering myself to be privileged, I didn't come from money, but I'm in that time in my life, I didn't have a big family, and I could fly to a very cheap place and live off of almost nothing. Now I can tell you that, first of all, you need to take a long time, not a month, not a few weeks. If you can and you need to work on it, it's important to take as much as you can. I will say a year, because it doesn't start as like, oh my God, this is a vacation. For myself, like day one, you're suffering. Day two, you're suffering. Day three, you're suffering. Like you're going to suffer for a while until you allow yourself to be in this, okay, now enough time passed. I can be in this mindset of I'm not doing anything. And now let's start working on things that I want to do. And I think before we're getting to what I actually did, it's important to get to the point that you actually can do things. Because if day three of your vacation, quote unquote, if day three of your time off, you would say, okay, I have a month. Let's start working on my mental health. It's not going to work. You need to almost detach yourself from your day to day. You need to almost have this detox. And it took a couple of months to get through this detox and get to the point that I have this rhythm and I have my day for myself. And I look in the mirror and I say, today, I don't have a job. I don't do anything. Allow yourself to not do anything. And that took a couple of months. Then I got to the point that I was in a really bad shape health-wise, because startups are bad for your health if you don't take them in the right way. I think I met a lot of entrepreneurs, and I think maybe you agree with me, all first-timers are in bad shape. This is something that I've noticed. It's really hard to stop in the beginning of your entrepreneurial career and tell yourself, okay, now I'm getting into shape. I'm going to eat well. I'm going to sleep well. It's in the first one. I'm allowing yourself take a moment. If you're in the first startup, allow yourself to treat yourself a little bit poorly. But that was after 7 years of doing that. And New York, Israel time zones, I was on 3 hours of sleep, 4 hours of sleep for 7 years, eating not so well, having a really bad mental health practice. Actually, I didn't have a mental health practice at all. So I was always wanting to start with that, and I didn't know where to start. So obviously, what I do when I don't know what to do, I read all the amount of information that you have everywhere, listen to every podcast. You can do a different podcast about self-help books and podcasts that I found many of them not very helpful. Many of them got me feeling that, wait, I really cannot do half the things that you offer. I feel even worse than what I started with. But I started to pick up things, talk to entrepreneurs, talk to people that I appreciate their opinion, and really pick up some things. So the first thing that I had to do is get my sleep right. And that took long months to get my sleep right. And I'm a bad sleeper. And I also can survive on 3 hours of sleep. So I was Superman. For me, it was like one of my biggest advantages is like, yeah, I can function on 3 hours of sleep every night. You know what it is for an entrepreneur? You're literally 60-70%. You have 60-70% more capacity than anyone else. But apparently it's really bad for you. Like you go through the research,
And
it's really
it
not
catches
something
up
you
to
should.
you.
Yeah, it's really not something you should adapt and adopt. And so I had to get my sleep right. And that took a few months of really not doing a lot during the day. I think this is one of the things that, when you do a lot, you're wired and you on a computer until 10, 11 p.m. It takes you a long time to undo this, and you usually cannot. So the fun thing about not taking a year off is you don't do much. You don't have a lot to think of that you did during the day. What did I do today? I went on a workout. I went on a walk with my wife. I made dinner. I started weird projects like sourdough projects, like weird things like that. And then you lay in bed, listen to a book about, 7 p.m., 8 p.m. And your mind is just starting to unwind. And it's really beautiful. Having the first night of good sleep was better than any drug I think anyone can take. Like waking up in the morning after a good 8 hours, if you're an entrepreneur, you will probably resonate with this. It's amazing. It really feels great. So that was one of the first things I did. I think after that, once you get a little bit the rhythm of time off and because again, I didn't set myself at like a random dates. You now take a year off. I knew I need to take time off. I knew I cannot think about anything, career oriented. I couldn't think about anything tech oriented. I didn't want to hear the word startups. I didn't want to hear about funding. I didn't want to hear about hiring. This was like all words that I didn't want to hear. So I went, I think, pretty deep into the realm of mental health. And again, not sure how much we want to get into here because there is a lot in that year that I've done that I think was one of the best years of my life of expansion and learning a lot about myself. And I went through from really a lot of good therapy sessions with many people and sticking to a really strict but fun mental health that included cold plunges and saunas and meditations and everything that you've listened to in books. But I went into it like I got it, and I really stuck to it, and all the way up to the other end of the spectrum to plant medicine. Not sure that's the podcast for it, but got into this as well. And it was such I was, I think, 6 months or 7 months in, and me and my wife, we took an Airbnb on this weird mountain in Spain for a couple of months. It was just us and this British lady that took care of this like compound. And I think it was Hanukkah. And we didn't even have anywhere to buy like candles or anything. So my wife made this like project with something that we found. And we went and we pick up some fruits and vegetables. Like I found myself in a very surreal, peaceful place that I could tell myself, okay, you needed that. You didn't know how to get here. There is no playbook. But I realized how much I needed to dissolve a little bit of the experience that I got and make a pact with myself that what I did so far, wonderful 7 years of my beginning of my career as an entrepreneur, that belong to the past. And from now on, you're going to do things differently. And that agreement with myself was really one of those pivotal moments of you don't have to hate everything in the past, because I got there. I got there after what happened with Avo. I got to hate that, like that word of like hate. I was really there. I was like, I hate startups. I don't want employees. I don't want hypergrowth. I hate VC money. All of this. I got to the point that I really didn't want to do it. And I spoke to people and I said, this is awful. I had this enlightenment of like, you people, you're doing all of those things. You don't understand. This is really bad for you. And I agreed with myself that this is not going to be my next adventure. I'm not going to do it that way. And in many different subsections of what I'm not going to do exactly next time. But mainly it was know that you can do it differently and you will do it differently because you have this in your past. And that happened after 7 or 8 months of me really dedicating my life into doing nothing and to learn about myself and to expand my mental health capacity.
Amazing. And once you got to that settled point, from there, how did you decide to start something new? I mean, I already know that the way you went into it was with much more intention and clarity. But at what point did you feel like, okay, like let's get back in the saddle? Maybe it's a different saddle, but back in a saddle nonetheless.
Yeah, I actually didn't decide that I want to get back in the saddle. And I think that's the nice story about it. I think it was October last year. I started to get an itch of something. I wanted to do something. But again, I was still in that, don't talk to me about startups. I don't want to hear about this. I don't want to do it. What I've been doing in the past 5 or 6 years is talking to entrepreneurs, friends. I have really good relationship with VCs that introduce me to people, and I just sit with them and, advise, call it the way you want it. I don't know what you think about consultancy and for startups, but I have my opinion, but I just sit with entrepreneurs and talk.
I'm a huge
fan. What?
I'm a huge fan.
Yeah. All right. So yeah, I'm a big fan. It depends on what,
Yes.
if I think what I like to do is hearing their story and resonate with like, everything is going to be okay. Let me tell you what happened to me. And this is type of like, almost, I want to say like a coach, kind of like again, no money.
And it's also
involved,
just
like
benefiting from your experience on,
exactly.
what I call is like avoiding the blind spots, whether it's mental health, whether it's the wrong tax structure, whether it's the wrong hiring plan. I think, again, this is the power of the repeat entrepreneur, and we'll call it the conscious repeat entrepreneur. And what they can share with first-time entrepreneurs is super, super valuable. I would say that there's a big difference between someone who is doing consulting and someone who is a consultant. I'll draw
Yeah,
that distinction.
I agree.
And I think that the utility that you find is often with people who, and again, I'm biased here because I also like did consulting, did advising. I don't know which one it is, but I pretty quickly realized that that's not a career path that I was interested in going down long term, because frankly, for one simple reason, it's that it's not scalable,
Hmm.
and it can actually drive you into the ground as well. And when you're doing it very much on your own terms and you're doing it in a very bespoke, natural way, I think that's fantastic. But as a person who is aspirational, it starts to not add up and you start to want to do more and more. And then the whole business model falls apart. And so that's why there's a distinction between someone who is doing consulting and someone who is a consultant who's decided to plant their flag there. And I think that, as kind of brutal as that sounds in a lot of ways, it is probably the right distinction. And when a founder meets someone who advertises themselves as a consultant versus them getting naturally or organically introduced to someone as, hey, I think that this person's experience can help you, it's a very different, the whole essence of the thing is different.
Totally agree. I couldn't phrase it better. I experienced them both on both sides of the spectrum. Right? I had many consultants throughout the lifetime of Avo and before. And it's funny that you mentioned why, like, because it wasn't scalable, you didn't want to continue with this. The reason I couldn't do it, and it was really frustrating for me, is because they don't listen to you. And I think being a consultant, you really, really need to not be a good operator, because the one thing that you want as an operator is that for the things that you believe, that you will push for them to be executed. Not, I don't care about people listening to me, but as an operator, as an entrepreneur, I wanted the things that I believe that are right, that they will be executed in the end. And as a consultant, you just need to speak your mind and you log off, and you don't care if they did it or didn't do it. But that wasn't for me. I was like, okay, I
I
cannot.
very much relate to that. I mean, I basically got in like a yelling match with Roy Mann, because I felt very strongly that something should be measured or calculated a certain way, and he felt strongly that it should be a different way. And it was actually a very productive argument because we were trying to, it wasn't I'm right, you're right type of argument. It wasn't actually an ego thing at all. It was very much like, what's the right way to do this? And what's the best way to do this? But that's very uncommon.
Yeah,
And we were ultimately able to come to a mutual understanding and a clear way of presenting the data that we were, discussing at hand. But
yeah,
yeah, it can be very nice to kind of not care. I've been guilty of this in previous jobs. I know my dad has been guilty of this in previous jobs. It sounds like you have as well, of just caring too much and learning how to be the consultant that just signs off and says, my hours are up, like, good luck, and actually not caring can be very refreshing. But again, it gets old because either that's your nature or it's not your nature.
yeah. Yeah, you really have to. And it happened to me because throughout this year of break, I also thought that I'm going to try to my luck in the VC world. And then I also realized that it's even if you're getting to the operational figure in the VC, nothing is going to be as being an entrepreneur as an operator in a startup. Like you need to make this decision in your life when you go there, that even if you think something needs to go that way, you cannot push. You can push for it to a certain extent, but someone else will take this decision, and you need to be okay with that. And I,
Yeah.
at this point in my life, cannot be okay with this.
I very much relate to that. And, I have strong opinions on certain, really economic arrangements inside companies and, best practices and prioritization. But before I jumped into being an investor, I'm not a control investor. And I think that the VCs that get a bad rap behave like control investors. Look, if you're a private equity fund and you own a company, fine, like, do what you please. The economics of venture capital don't support that, first of all, in terms of what you own and what skin you have in the game and
Yeah.
everything. And then ultimately, every venture backed startup story is a founder story. And so this is something I go through myself with the decision process on investing is if I don't feel like I can throw something over the fence and maybe it'll get caught, maybe it won't get caught, but it'll be okay either way, then it's not the right team, right? Like I don't expect founders to listen to everything I say. In fact, I actually view it as a somewhere between a red and a yellow flag. Like if they're
If
doing
they
everything
listen.
I'm saying, I'm like, no, 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 no. Like you need to have strong opinions. I have
Yeah.
strong opinions loosely held. You need as a founder to have strong opinions strongly held. And if I can, change things like 1 degree left or right, great. Like I feel like I'm a top 1% VC then. But
Yeah.
anything beyond that is just outside the purview of, what your job actually is. And I think there's a lot of misunderstanding around that. I'm in this weird place where I started my own VC fund. And I always say there's some key differences between starting a startup and starting a VC fund. One is that you're committed for a lot longer, right? Like if you start a startup and you raise $5 million and you burn $1 million of it and you just realize that like it's not working, you could just be like, hey, VCs, here's $4 million back. It just didn't work. And everyone's like, okay, thanks for not wasting another $4 million proving that it doesn't work and just owning it and understanding that. And obviously that's not what the core outcome is, but it's better to get $4 million back than $0 million back. And
Yeah.
someone might push back on saying, well, no, you should keep trying and then you can get it. No, if anyone's even thinking that after burning $1 million, like that story is probably over. And that's a great optionality. So that's distinction number one is that, when you raise a VC fund, you're locked in for 10 years. I had an LP of mine explain that the fees that I'm earning in years 8 and 9 and 10 of the fund life, which are much lower than you earn in years like 1 through 5. He's like, that's our insurance because that's your salary to continue to manage these investments in this fund.
Yeah.
So that's one distinction. But the second distinction, which I would say balances that out, is that it's not grow or die.
Mhm.
And startups are grow or die. And that is a really intense reality. And it speaks to what we've been discussing up to now is that you don't get the space to take time off as a founder. And it's really hard to know we wrote a blog post about this, what we call the founder expiration point, where the economic reality and the physical, emotional, mental reality just come to an impasse and like, it's just not going to work. And that's a tough position that really a lot of companies get to. And I'm talking about ones that see a level of success, not the ones that just don't work and never get off the ground. It's the ones that see some level of success and then they think they can force that and manifest that. And it's just really hard for a founder to step away, take a month off. Like it's just not an option. And finding that sustainability along the way either requires someone who's completely nuts, someone who's superhuman, or someone who's just such an expert at maintaining balance and scaling and bringing the right people around them to foster that sustainable success. And as a VC, which I've been doing now for the last 6 years, running my own fund, like this past summer, I had to take a month off. Like I was in this room right I'm in right now, which is our mamad. It's our bomb room with my wife and 3 kids with mattresses all over the floor. And, doing that every night for 2 weeks takes its toll and makes you wonder why any of this stuff that we're doing and talking about even matters. And frankly, after that, like I just needed a month off.
Yeah.
And I tried to explain this to a friend of mine and he was like, no, I just have to work. And he also runs a fund. And I was like, yeah, but you don't have to. Like you might feel like you have to, but it actually is probably better for your business if you just take a month off, like, once a year. And that is like a huge benefit that I enjoy. And yeah, there's other challenges and stuff along the way, but my old boss at NEA, Harry Weller, who unfortunately passed away about 9 years ago, he used to take 6 weeks every summer and go to Telluride with his wife and kids. And he would have an away message on his email for 6 weeks. And that might seem like a, arrogant, lazy VC thing to do. But let me tell you, if you go study that guy's investments and his returns and the creativity that he brought to his job and the intensity that he brought to his job outside that 6 weeks, you see that like he really needed that and the ultimate productivity was much higher. But again, that's not a luxury that founders get, is to take that month and a half away and use that as a recharging point. Because even a 2-week vacation, like, also doesn't really count. You know, when I was at Morgan Stanley, I was the only analyst ever basically to take a 2-week vacation. And it was only because I had just done the Facebook IPO that they let me take 2 consecutive weeks off. Because when you take 1 week off, it's 5 days, right? It's only 5 days off. When you
Yeah.
take 2 weeks off, you get at least the 2 days in the middle as well. So
Yeah.
you really get 12 days off. It is not 14 days or 16 days like it might be in a normal people job. And you know, that definitely helps, but it's nothing. So
Mhm.
anyway, let's fast forward to, you know, you and Beeri reconnecting and deciding to do this a different way.
Yeah. So I think so. Yeah, going back to so consultancy, and then I realized I need to find something that I am really passionate and I can also do, but I have this set of like principles that I want to carry with me to the next thing. Simultaneously, the AI coding stuff started, so I started to do a lot of projects, and I mentioned that it was like such a wonderful time for me. I came up with like a billion apps and I started to code a lot of them, and that was really fun time. So I started to just chat with a lot of people from my past, and Beeri was leading our growth at Avo back in the day. And here's first principle that I told myself is I want to find not just someone I like as a person, which was definitely something I am definitely going to do. I want to find someone that is in a very similar point in their life like me. This is number one. Number two, I'm going to have a very intense conversation with them before we start anything about what kind of a founder you are and what kind of company you want to build. And I think since that moment, I've been talking to so many entrepreneurs that don't have this conversation, that I cannot stress enough how important it is. I actually have a startup that I helped, unfortunately, make them understand that they are not good together because they have different aspirations and they're in different place in their life, because one of them has already exited their company. They have 8 figures in the bank account, and the other one is living month to month. That is a very tough point for two founders to start working together. So those are two principles of like, I want to find someone that I'm enjoying, but also let's have a conversation about what type of founder you are and what type of company you want to build. That was like something that started our conversations. And I think what I realized is that there are like a couple of type of founders in the world. One of them is the Elon Musks of the world. Is I'm going to do something, nobody will stop me, and I'm going to change the course of the universe. I've met them. I actually work with one of them. This type is so unique that you need to be really brave to attach yourself to someone like this as their mission, because they will do things that you will not going to be okay with it. So this is one type of like an entrepreneur that you really need to be okay with this journey. The other type of an entrepreneur, that will be the type of person that just love high speed and complex problems. And I almost want to say they live off of like challenges, and that's what drives them in the morning, which is an amazing person to work with. But sometimes it will get to the point that you will build something that you no longer understand why you built it that way, or no longer be okay with the mission, but it still gives you this rush. Mm-hmm. So this is also not the type of founder I am. I used to be close to this because I found it intriguing, but I'm in a different place in my life right now and I want to build something else. And there was a different type of founder that I just love technology. I love working on interesting problems, and I want to have comfortable life with 8 or 9 figures. I think 9 figures is insane, but 8 figures in my bank. And it's, I've made a lot of calculations about it, and we can go on this topic of like how much money you need in your life, because it's a very interesting topic and it's such a taboo. Saying a number and talking about numbers in this world of entrepreneurs is like, how much money do you think you need? I have this question to every entrepreneur I talk to. It's like, how much money you need? Do you know? Have you run this calculation? Like, do you know how much money you need? And all of them is like, yeah, it's like, maybe this, maybe that. It's like, I promise you, you don't. I promise you, you don't need nobody needs $100 million in their bank account. It's insane. Like, that's something I like to really say it out loud. I believe it's actually true. So when I got to the call with Beeri, I was like, okay, where are you in your life? He was in between startups, just finished his last startups. He was consulting a few companies. Great. You don't do anything for a year. Awesome. Do you have financial security? Didn't have. But do you need money at the moment, in this moment right now in life? No. Great. Check, because yes, I do need money. I didn't come from money, but I still have some savings, so I don't need salary now. Why does it matter? Because if I need salary now and I've been there, first month with an idea to go raise money from VCs, and I don't want to be there. I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
This is not something I want to do. I'm a repeat founder. I want to think about what I even want before I'm going to raise money, if I will raise money at all. So that was the second thing. And the third was, let's talk about what do you want to achieve? And for both of us, it was very clear that it was like, I don't want to build a $1 billion company. Sorry. It's not gonna happen. Maybe if we'll get like to a really good groove and it was an amazing problem that we both love, I will build a $1 billion company, but I'm not gonna hire 500 people. I don't want to do that. I don't want to manage. I don't want to be a manager. I can manage a few people. I don't want my title to be a manager. That's something I want to avoid if I can. And the money aspect, and we both said, like, how much money do you actually want? If you want to exit, if you want to talk about exit strategy, what do you want to do? And we spoke about this like around 8 figures number, like high 7, low like 8. And again, I know I'm talking about it like it's nothing, but I think in my world, I know, and I spoke to a lot of founders, that this was never a conversation. It was always, let's go big, or let's go home, let's go broke, or let's take like this $1 billion exit. And for us, it was great. Maybe we don't even need to build a startup. Maybe we can build a lifestyle business that can really scale really great. And that's how we started, by the way. Didn't want to go raise money. I wanted to build a good business. We're both really good with people, really good with enterprise sales, really good with services. I know you love the services and software, services and software. Like, this is what we do. We love this idea, and we started that way. Started developing. I had the best time of my life. I slept well. I exercised. I did my mental health. I worked with an amazing person, and then we hired some really good people. We were profitable, or on a, or like at least a little bit like close to profitability, with getting a little bit of salary for the first couple of months. So going between what I've known to this was such a conscious decision, and such a really good, like, we built it very well, and we can go and really make the point of, when we spoke about this exit strategy of like how much money you need, it really set us up to understand what type of company we want to build, what type of customers you're going to have, who is circle, what from those customers, who can invest, who can become a strategic partner, and who we can exit to. That happened very early on.
I think this is the biggest mistake that a lot of founders don't
Yes.
do that exercise. There's so many things you can do in an hour that completely change the clarity with which you run. And you mentioned earlier the founder that just wants to run fast and solve hard problems. And I think that that's a lot of founders, and frankly, a lot of what VCs and incubators look for as a characteristic. This term spiky has become very big. And it's like, just sit down and have the conversation of like, what do we really want to get out of this? And let's start from there and then work into what might it become? How do we want to sell it? But start with that basic truth that everyone can get aligned around. And then again, how you sell it, what you talk about, all that stuff. Okay, fine. Like that can be a whole different world if you want, but it just makes things a lot easier. I mean, in my world, it's like, have the unit economics conversation early on. Like, what do we need to believe from a financial perspective for this thing to ever actually make a lot of money? And, if you take on one end of the spectrum, like an Uber, it's like, yeah, we need to raise around $6 billion of equity capital to achieve global dominance. So then we can double our prices once we have global brand recognition. And then we'll be profitable. I'm like, if that's your plan, I'm probably not the investor for you. You guys came in with such clarity and healthy rooted confidence in how to do this that like, we didn't even have to have that conversation, because also you guys were already making money. But yeah, it's wild that people don't, like, if there's one thing that people take away from this conversation, I hope it's this. It's just like, obviously what you mentioned earlier about sitting with your co-founders, making sure you're on the same page. But I think this is a critical part of that conversation of, what do we want this to look like? What kind of company do we want to build? Like, what kind of customers do we want to deal with? Which part of the economy do we want to sit in? All of these things are, again, they're not always the easiest conversations or the simplest, but they're also not massively time consuming.
I will just tie it back to the point that I really want that to be something that will say out loud, is that in the end of the day, you wake up every morning, you're like 7, 8 months in, you're not going to wake up in the morning with the idea of, I'm at a startup because I'm going to become a millionaire. You're going to wake up in the morning thinking about, I'm going to have fun today because I'm working with the people I chose to work with, and I'm having fun working with them. And I'm going to work on problems I decided I want to work on, and it's fun working on them. And I was very fortunate that in my two biggest startups, that was the case, but I met so many people that they are like a year, 2, 3 years in this game, and they're talking about their co-founder that they're already checked out, or they're talking about the problem that they don't really want to solve and don't know how they get here. And this is something that I really urge people to speak about it in the first conversation. And I know that first timers, it's not an easy conversation because you're just going to run and you're just going to do it because it's, it's something that you thought about and it sounds sexy. But if you can sit and have this conversation, it's so...
Yeah. Yeah. So it sounds like you ran a playbook here and really executed it to perfection. I just to be clear, like I feel lucky to have been along for the ride. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think I'm the only kind of traditional closed-end VC fund on the cap table.
Yeah.
And, a little bit of additional background. I had met Beeri through my friend Evan. They went to college together. Evan and I were friends when we were both living in DC at the same time. And we met, and I actually introduced Beeri to a bunch of my companies as someone who was doing consulting and advising, because I immediately saw what his strengths were and that he could help those companies. And when you guys started this, I was very, very intrigued. And I had more confidence in your guys' ability to execute than I normally do. And so it seems like you played this out extremely well. So I'll let you share kind of, I guess, the rest of the story of how this played out. How we talked earlier a little bit about what you have to look forward to, what you're nervous about. So I'll let you take it from there.
Yeah. I would start by saying this is definitely not, it's easy to connect the dots, looking back. Like it was always, definitely a lot of luck, and don't know what your opinion about luck, but be in the right place, right time, looking for the one above and asking for things. But I think that there is no playbook, let's say. Like there's no playbooks out there, I think, in general, and following playbooks, it's really hard. I think taking what you've learned and really apply it, it's the only thing that works. And being honest with your surroundings, low amount of ego in this process really got us to really play the cards right. This specific situation happened. We were in this process building the new way of thinking about marketing in 2025, 2026. I think AI brought a lot of new capabilities in your life, but also AI is now the new way of people looking into the internet. So I think this was our first realization, is that the internet is going to change. We used to go to Google. We used to look at blue links, and now the reality is that we are looking for answers, and there's like a chat that we ask things and we get answers. And that was our first aha moment about internet is changing, marketing is going to change. Let's do something. Our strength, me and Beeri, immediately go and get those big companies and big organizations to talk to us. I think this is one of our biggest strengths. If you're an entrepreneur that have this in their pocket, this is one of the best things.
This was the other core part of my thesis in investing in you guys.
If you can get the teams.
If you can get big customers, then the rest is just details.
Yeah. And I said for two main reasons. One of them is like definitely because you can get customers, so it's nice. But the other thing is, especially like marketing, we really saw it. Yeah. The most talented people work in those big companies in marketing. They are almost the futuristic people they see what comes because they have so much traffic, Wix and Monday.com and HubSpot and those huge incumbents. They see first what's the next chapter of the technology, the next chapter of the internet. And we can experience it. We can experience it with them. So that was our main go-to-market strategy, is let's go and let's develop tools for them specifically. We obviously had something when we go to them, because we pitch the idea of, we have this software, we have this tool that can help you analyze your performances, your brand visibility in AI. But then we just had conversations with them and they helped us build the tool. And that was such an, going back to our conversations about how the gap, the distance between the business person to the code becomes shorter. That conversation with this marketing expert going through me, and then I can go and develop the product, was such a closed circle that I can iterate very fast and go back with a really good polished product literally the next day. So we started to roll this idea, get more clients, get more customers, really high caliber customers, and develop that product with them. And I think we looked at the market and we really saw that if marketing is going to be a huge deal in the next couple of years, there are a few major players that are going to be interested in this evolution, call it the way you want. That was Wix and HubSpot were two names that were thrown. We got a connection to Wix through you, and we were like really working on getting a few more strategic collaborations with those players. Definitely didn't think about acquisition. It's not something you think about. Your company are bought, not sold. You don't think about acquisition after 5 months of a lifetime of a company. It's not something you're there. Nobody should and nobody can, but it's like, we thought about strategic partnerships. So we went and we spoke to Wix, we spoke to HubSpot. That was like two of our biggest successes. I think the teams there are amazing. So we started to work with them, with the marketing teams of both of those companies. And I think that was our first glimpse into the world of big tech, how they think about marketing, how they think about the future. And that was apparently one of the best due diligence that a company can do on you, is to let their internal team work with the tool. So when things progressed with HubSpot, there was almost no need for us to, let's look at the demo. No, you have 40, 50 people on your very good marketing team working on our product for a couple of months now. So we started to work with them on discussing strategic partnerships and how for their customers it's going to look like, both Wix and HubSpot. And we had them joined as our investors in the safe that we opened. I think we almost, raising money was never like a goal for us. I think it was something that we knew that if it doesn't take too much attention from us, we can do. And we have people like you sitting and strategic partners that we will love to work with and are not going to interfere with our business, because that's something we really appreciate. And they can help us building a lot of those relationships. So we took a little bit of money and we expanded the team on the technical side and on the go-to-market side. And we continue working with the best teams in the world and developed really, I think, one of the best products in the market. And what's fun about answer engine optimization is that you're a disruptor, you're a pioneer. It's a new product. You're an educator. So you go into each sales conversation and you educate the people. And then you see how they started to speak the language, and then they give you their input, and then you take the input to the team and start developing your product around it. And I think that's one of the best things that we did with such short iteration. And that we really, for the majority of the time, we were 5 or 6 people on the team, and we got to, I think, $1.5 million in ARR. That was a dream for VCs for sure. But for me to cross $1 million, not really needing the money, right? Not really using the money I took from investors, but really be able to have this type of attraction with so little amount of people was, for me, one of the best successes of the story, because I knew I want to build a really good company that operates really well. Not a lot of people really have fun doing what I do, not do a lot of managerial and noise work. And we had a really good groove and flow for 6-7 months of waking up in the morning, have a smile on my face and go to work with the best people that, I love working with. Every sales conversation is a yes. This type of like an event that I knew it was temporary. I know it happened. It happened now and then in startups, but it was like the best time of our life, and it was really fun. And yeah, and then we started conversations with HubSpot about acquisition. And long story short, I think that we met the team, they met us. It was a really interesting click moment of they really appreciate what we built. They are really the pioneer in the marketing world. They actually created inbound marketing. This is literally, if
Yeah.
there is one company I would say let's be a part of in this new world of the internet, let's be a part of HubSpot. So it was almost like from the first moment was something that both Beeri and I said, of course, let's go for it, because if this is it, we want to work in the company that has the chance of disrupting the new world of marketing. And for them, I think it was a really important feature that they want to develop for their customers. So it was really a match made in heaven. And yeah, here we
Amazing.
are.
Well, mazel tov again. So now you're a month and a half after announcing the acquisition by HubSpot. How do you think about working for a company with almost 9,000 employees, that's been publicly traded for over 10 years, uh, with multiple global offices where, yeah, it's just a whole different can of worms than what you're used to. So how do you think about that side of things?
Yeah. So first of all, it's a very short amount of time. But so let's meet again in 3 months and I'll share more. Immediate impressions, it sounds obvious, but I think really, really, really strong teams. They have a thing for talent and for preserving talent that I've never seen anywhere else. So really, really strong teams that we're working with. They understand that they have this feeling of an incumbent, but they also really feels like they know where they are in the lifetime of their company. Of there is a pinnacle moment of marketing is changing. They invented inbound marketing back in the day. They might need to do it again. So there's like this notion of we are now the pioneer again, and we need to do something for our customers. And yeah, it's my first time working in a company in this size. I'm having a lot of fun. They're really organized. They're really professional. And I think there is like a lot of wish to learn on their side on what we have done in the past year. So for now, in the past, couple of weeks, being onboarded into working with the teams, I'm feeling great. I think it's gonna work, and I think it's gonna be amazing.
Awesome. I very much enjoyed hearing the whole story,
Same.
which I hadn't heard most of before. So I'm very grateful for that.
It's been really fun. I think, we know each other for a very short amount of time. And I have been listening to your podcast. We're having conversation. I think you have a really interesting perspective of this world. And I wish more had your observations of VC, but also I think entrepreneurship. And I think you work with founders in a way that I really appreciate. And thank you for the support throughout the way.
Well, thank you very much. And again, mazel tov, and very excited for you guys. And I think we can say for sure that you have stayed true, as we always sign off on the podcast. So thanks so much. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Alex.